Tonight, slip into the slow, snow-covered world of the Vikings, where surviving winter wasn't glory. It was poetry in fur and firelight. It's cold tonight, not your kind of cold. This isn't a "where's my heated blanket" kind of evening. This is the kind of cold that swallows sound. The kind that bites through fur and bone and good intentions. You are in the North. Not the polite, snowy postcard North, but the actual North, where winter is less a season and more a lifestyle. Welcome to the Viking Age. You step outside your longhouse. The wind is low tonight, but the cold hangs in the air like a bad conversation. It's quiet, except for the muted crunch of packed snow beneath your boots. Overhead, the aurora shivers across the black canvas sky. Like the gods couldn't make up their minds between fire and water and just decided on green electricity instead. Your breath fogs the air in front of you. You look down at your tunic, layered with wool and stitched in the hasty but loving way that says, "This will probably survive another season, if you don't." The wooden door behind you closes with a dull thunk, muffled by thatch and frost. Inside, your family curls under thick blankets made from the hides of animals you probably shouldn't name. One of the kids is still awake, probably imagining dragons, or what little there is to imagine when your whole world is fish, fire, and ice. You probably won't make it through this day. But don't worry, we'll take it slow. 1 hour at a time. Before we go further, if your eyes are heavy, don't fight them. You're not being tested. No quiz will follow. If you're enjoying this quiet, sleepy Viking life, gently tap the like button. Maybe subscribe. It makes the long nights feel a little warmer. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your village, stronghold, or suburb. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You begin by walking toward the sea as many Vikings do. It's not a noble quest. You're checking the nets. Fish are survival here, salted, smoked, dried, boiled, forgotten in the back of the shed. This time of year, the water offers few gifts, but you go anyway. Routine is one of the few luxuries you can afford. The shore crunches with a dusting of ice, brittle like burnt sugar. Somewhere in the distance, a raven calls. You don't answer. You're not that lonely. Not yet. The nets are stiff and reluctant. You pull them anyway, fingers numbing despite the gloves. There's one herring, limp but serviceable. Maybe dinner. Maybe bait for the next try. You pocket it like a reluctant coin. On the walk back, your mind drifts. There's not much else to do. Thinking is free, and in this part of the world, that's rare. You consider firewood, there's never enough. You consider boots, yours are leaking. You consider the longhouse, the center of your world, full of smoke and snoring and stew that tastes like boiled promises. Inside again, warmth is relative. The hearth glows with the steady confidence of a tired dog. You add a log. The fire protests, but accepts. Around you, shadows stretch across wooden beams. The smoke filters upward and sideways and wherever it pleases, because chimneys haven't been invented yet. Not here, anyway. Most of the smoke just gets absorbed into your lungs or weaves into your hair like reluctant perfume. A baby coughs. A dog twitches. Someone farts. Home. Your longhouse is shared by nearly 20 people. Family mostly. Some you like, some you don't remember liking. Privacy is a myth, but so is warmth, so you get over it. Everyone has their own corner, demarcated by objects. A carved spoon, a worn-out comb, a blanket that smells like goat and nostalgia. Here's your historical fact for tonight. Most Viking longhouses were not the wild free-for-alls popular culture suggests. They were well organized, with sleeping platforms raised off the ground to avoid the cold drafts, and central hearths running down the spine of the home, like a giant, flaming spinal cord. Cozy in a charred vertebrae kind of way. You lean back onto your bedding, woven straw, a woolen blanket, and whatever else you could scrounge that wasn't alive when you found it. You close your eyes, but sleep doesn't come yet. Not because of stress, no one had meetings or taxes due tomorrow, but because sleep takes its time here. The body's cold even when the soul is tired. A mother sings softly to a child nearby. The lullaby is more hum than song. You recognize it, it's older than language, older than memory. It's the kind of tune that sounds like it's been passed down through shadows and soup. Here's your weird cultural tidbit. Viking families believed certain lullabies could ward off dark spirits, or at least bore them into leaving. It's not exactly science, but it's something. And here's something scholars still argue about. Whether Vikings truly believed in trolls and land spirits, or if they just liked blaming things on them. Crops fail, trolls. Milk sours, spirits. You stub your toe in the dark? Definitely a spirit. Possibly a vengeful one with poor lighting design. The fire pops. You watch the flames for a while, letting them tell their own stories. Flickers, waves, collapses, like dreams you haven't had yet. Outside, the wind begins to rise. Not loud, just insistent, like a conversation happening in another room. You pull your blanket tighter. Your eyelids feel heavier. The cold won't kill you tonight, but it's still trying. Morning is a polite suggestion here, not a promise. The sun doesn't rise so much as glance around the room and decide it'll come back later. Light filters in, gray and soft, like old wool. You're already awake, though you didn't notice the moment sleep ended. You sit up slowly. Your back protests. Your legs agree. This is just the morning song of your body, sung in cracks and creaks and a symphony of disapproval. Outside, it's snowing sideways. Not heavily, just enough to let you know who's boss. The world is white and blurred, like the gods left the lens smudged. You dress in layers. Under tunic, belt, cloak. Every piece tells a story. Some of those stories include lice. The wool is coarse, but warm, and itchy, but again warm. It's a complicated relationship. The chores begin. There's no weekend in your world, just days and the things that fill them. First task, water. You grab the bucket and head toward the stream, careful not to slip. Everyone remembers the time Leaf cracked his tailbone and had to eat lying down for a month. Now he limps like a heroic saga character, which he is not. The stream is half frozen, like a pastry left out too long. You break the crust with a stick. The water is shockingly clear, and shockingly cold. You fill the bucket, and your hands go numb in protest. The bucket, made of wood and faith, leaks slightly. You walk home fast. Inside again, the fire greets you like an old friend who never left because it has nowhere else to go. You pour the water into the clay pot near the hearth. It'll be used for porridge, maybe soup, possibly both, depending on your optimism. You glance at the pantry, or rather, the corner of the house where the food lives. Salted fish, some turnips, a half-empty sack of barley. There's a single dried apple hanging from a beam. It's been there for 3 weeks. No one wants to eat it. It's become something of a symbol, like a saint but chewy. Your major historical fact of the morning. Vikings didn't eat as much meat as you might think. Sure, they hunted, and yes, they had livestock, but most diets were heavy in grains, dairy, and preserved fish. In fact, most of what you eat could be described with the phrase regretfully beige. Time for the second weird thing. Some Viking households buried iron knives or animal bones in the threshold of the door. Why? Protection from spirits. Or possibly just to confuse archaeologists. Back outside, you gather wood. The forest isn't far, but it's not friendly. The trees loom skeletal and disapproving, like they've seen generations of people come and go and have opinions about it. You find some dry branches, strip bark with your axe, and bundle them together. Every sound is crisp. Even your own breathing sounds like someone else's. On your way back, you pass that same stream. It's freezing harder now. You see a squirrel. Or maybe it's a fox. Either way, it doesn't care about you. You reach the longhouse just as someone opens the door. Warmth spills out like soup onto stone. You step inside. Breakfast is happening. Porridge, thin but hot. Some dried berries dropped in tiny explosions of flavor. Your wooden spoon has a crack, but it still works. Like most things here, there's a brief argument over firewood stacking techniques. It ends in a shrug. No one has the energy for drama. It's too cold for opinions. Later, you help fix a hole in the roof. Not with shingles. There are no shingles. Just thatch, sod, and prayer. The roof has been leaking since last thaw, but winter is persistent and creative. It finds the gaps. A child laughs. One of the older men tells a story about a bear that once stole his boots. No one believes him, but the story makes the day move faster. The smoke in the longhouse shifts with the wind. There are no windows, just a hole in the roof and hope. Your eyes sting slightly, but that's just part of the ambience. Outside again, the light is already fading. The day barely started and it's packing up. You remember the apple hanging from the beam. Still there, still symbolic. You take a moment and just sit. On the bench near the door, the wind sings through the gaps in the walls. Not loud, just enough to remind you that you're not alone. There's a peace here, hard-earned, a little damp, but real. You pull your cloak tighter and watch the sky fade from gray to dark blue, like ink spilled over ice. And the cold leans in again, persistent, quiet, and absolutely certain it will outlast you. But not tonight. Tonight you have fire, you have porridge, you have a cracked spoon and a roof that mostly works. And tomorrow, you'll go break the ice again. Unless, of course, the spirits do it for you. The night returns, not like a thief, but more like an overbearing relative who never really left. It seeps in through every seam in the longhouse, between planks, under doors, through the smoke hole like a curious spirit checking in. It's darker now, too. Not metaphorically, just literally. The sort of darkness where you forget your own hands until they brush your face and surprise you. You're back on your sleeping bench, tucked under a coarse blanket. The dog has claimed your feet, which is fine. Warmth is a communal agreement here. Everyone gives what they can, even if what they can give is a large, snoring dog. A baby cries somewhere near the hearth. The mother is already shushing it, whispering nonsense and half-remembered songs. You don't open your eyes. There's nothing new to see, and everything familiar is comforting. This is the long stillness of the Viking night. You hear a soft crackle, the fire, burning low now, chewing through the last of the kindling. You'll need to get more tomorrow. You always need more. Winter is a greedy guest. Someone stirs. A cough. Then another. The old woman across from you hawks into a rag, which is somehow both gross and endearing. She's made it through more winters than most. She's practically immortal at this point. Tonight someone tells a story. Not loudly, just enough for the room to hear. It drifts up, warm and curling like smoke. You recognize it halfway through. It's the one about the warrior who fell in love with a seal. Classic. Here's your major historical fact for tonight. Viking oral tradition preserved history through sagas, long, dramatic, occasionally absurd tales of warriors, gods, and people who made bad decisions in interesting ways. These sagas were recited during long winter nights, not just for entertainment, but to remember who you were and maybe distract from the frostbite. The seal lover ends up alone on a rock, talking to the moon. It's sad, but not tragic. Just Viking. And now for your cultural tidbit. Some Viking families would smear animal fat on their eyelids before sleeping, especially during the coldest nights. The idea was to keep the skin soft and protected from cracking in the dryness. It did not smell amazing, but neither did anything else. You roll onto your side. A few embers glow orange beneath the blackened logs. Someone snores, loudly, persistently, like a saw sawing through a pinion. Sleep comes again, but lightly. Winter doesn't let you sleep too deep. It's always knocking on the walls, rattling the thatch, reminding you, I'm still here. You dream of a summer that probably didn't happen. A sun that lasted more than 3 hours. Bees, whatever those are. When you wake again, the sky is a pale steel. Morning by Viking standards, which means there's light, but no warmth. Time to fetch snow. You've done water. Now it's snow. Sometimes, depending on the day, they're interchangeable. You grab a bucket and step outside, wrapped tight in fur and sarcasm. The snow crunches. It's fresh, powdery, and deceptively deep in places. You fall once. No one sees you, which means it didn't happen. You scoop bucketfuls, breath hissing in little clouds. Your beard has icicles again. It gives you a look of accidental wisdom. Back inside, the snow gets dropped near the fire to melt. It'll be used for washing. Not a full bath, let's not get crazy. Just a wipe down. Enough to maintain dignity, not achieve glamour. You chew on dried fish. Breakfast is chewy, like trying to eat a bookmark. You imagine it was once a majestic sea creature. Now it's a salty rectangle of survival. Your historical uncertainty for this section. Historians still debate how often Vikings truly bathed. Some sources say they washed weekly. Others argue it was more symbolic than effective. Given the smell in the longhouse, you lean toward symbolic. Later, you help patch a cloak. The wind tore it last week. You're not great at sewing, but your stitches are enthusiastic. Someone compliments you anyway. That's rare. You treasure it. Outside, the sun tries again. It fails but points for effort. You look at the frozen fields. The snow is deep, but underneath are the bones of your future. Barley, turnips, and whatever else didn't die last year. The air tastes like metal and wood smoke. A raven lands nearby. You nod. It ignores you. Classic raven. And the day continues. You, a bucket of snow, a patchwork cloak, and a fire that needs more wood than you have. But you're warm. For now. And you'll sleep again soon. This morning your toes are cold. Not chilly cold. More like, is this still part of my body cold? You flex them under the blanket. They respond. Barely. You're alive. Congratulations. A nearby goat bleats indignantly. Yes, the goat lives inside. No, you don't get a say in that. It's too cold for pride. Or for barn walls, apparently. You rise slowly, stiff from sleep and low temperatures. The dog, still at your feet, sighs dramatically, annoyed that you've moved. You mumble an apology. You mean it. The hearth is still warm, but only just. You add a log, then another. The fire catches with effort. It's like waking an old friend who resents mornings. Today is laundry day. Yes, Vikings did laundry. Occasionally, you gather the linen shifts and woolen tunics. Most are stiff from cold. One has something unidentifiable on it. You don't ask questions. You just carry it out to the stream. The stream, like always, is frozen in the shallow parts. You break through with a stick, muttering small curses that probably qualify as Viking poetry. You dunk the tunics, scrub them with lye soap, homemade and suspiciously crumbly. The water is cruel. Your hands go numb. Your brain follows. Here's your major historical fact. Viking soap was made using animal fat and ash. It worked, sort of, clean things. It also stripped skin of moisture, making you clean and cracked. A delightful duality. A nearby woman joins you. She's older, fierce, laughs like she's survived 12 winters by sheer spite. You talk about nothing for a while. That's the Viking way. Big emotions. Small conversations. On your way back, the sun hits a patch of ice and blinds you. You curse the gods. Then apologize. Just in case. Inside, the laundry gets hung by the hearth. It'll take all day to dry. Maybe 2. Or 4. You make tea. Okay, not TT. Just hot water with some herbs that don't taste like dirt. Much. You sit near the fire, hands wrapped around the clay cup. It's chipped. You like it anyway. Your cultural tidbit. Some Viking homes used dried moss as insulation, wedging it between planks. It worked surprisingly well and added a certain forest chic to the aesthetic. You drink slowly, watch the dog chase its tail, fail, and then pretend it meant to sit down. You relate. Later, a trader stops by. He's wrapped in 10 layers of animal. Smells like wet fur and ambition. He offers you salt in exchange for fish. You agree. Not because you need salt, but because you want the conversation. He mentions a settlement 2 fjords away that had a bear problem. You nod. Bears are the least of your problems, but it's nice to hear someone else complain for a change. You give him a piece of smoked herring as he leaves. He looks confused. Is it a gift or a test? No one's sure. You return to your seat by the fire. The tunics drip. The goat farts. It's a full day. The sky outside begins to darken again. You didn't notice it getting lighter in the first place. You wrap yourself in your cloak and sit still. The kind of still that's earned. The kind that makes the cold seem respectful, rather than rude. You look at the apple again. Still hanging there. Still not eaten. Still watching. Tonight you might take a bite. Or not. Some things are better left symbolic. And the fire crackles on. Warm. Persistent. Like you. Evening arrives without ceremony. No golden hour. No trumpet of birdsong. Just a gradual dimming. Like someone slowly pulling a blanket over the world. The snow outside glows faintly under a pale sky, catching the last light like the memory of a candle. Inside, the fire tries its best, flickering like an overworked storyteller. You sit cross-legged near the hearth, repairing a leather strap. It's cracked but salvageable, like most things here. Your fingers are stiff from the cold, but the rhythm of the task is oddly soothing. Stitch, pull, knot, repeat. Someone passes behind you with a bowl of soup. You don't ask what's in it. You don't need to know. The heat alone is a luxury. Steam rises like a ghost with good intentions. You glance toward the door. Snow piles against it in soft rebellion. You're not going anywhere tonight, which is just as well. Your boots are still damp, and your motivation is taking a nap. Here's your historical fact for this stretch of the evening. Vikings used bone needles and sinew for mending leather, sewing clothes, and making fishnets. Tools were precious, often passed down, sometimes buried with their owners. You, of course, have inherited a needle so crooked it might also serve as a moral lesson. Your cousin, well, someone you call a cousin, asks if you've seen her comb. You haven't, but you both pretend you might have. Viking life is full of shared ownership and selective memory. Combs were often carved from bone, and sometimes decorated with surprisingly elegant patterns for such a scratchy purpose. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. Vikings cleaned their ears with tiny bronze spoons, part of personal grooming kits worn like jewelry. Earwax maintenance was evidently a portable priority. A draft slips in from the door, curling around your ankles like a cat made of malice. You pull your cloak tighter and eye the fire, debating if you have the strength to get more wood. You don't, but you do it anyway. Outside, the wind moans. Not dramatic, just annoyed. It pushes against the longhouse like a drunk friend trying to get in without a key. You gather kindling from the lean-to. The sky above is a chalky purple, dotted with pinpricks of stars, indifferent and endless. The cold tugs at your ears. Your breath floats around you like a question left unanswered. You bring the wood in, drop it beside the hearth. Someone thanks you. That's rare. Back near your seat, a small child climbs into your lap. No conversation, just weight and warmth and trust. You wrap your cloak around both of you. The child smells like smoke and milk and whatever kids smell like when they've been rolling in goats. The room is quiet now, save for the occasional murmur. A lullaby begins again, same one as last night. Same slow hum, same ancient rhythm. You sip from a cup of something that might be beer or weak mead. It tastes like history and accidental fermentation. Historians still debate whether Vikings brewed their own mead at home or mostly relied on communal feasts. Either way, the stuff you're drinking tonight has the charm of a beverage with no fixed identity. The fire burns lower. Shadows stretch up the walls like lazy dancers. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, just to soften. The child shifts. The dog exhales. The world hums softly around you. A song with no chorus. The cold still waits outside. But you don't. You're here. Warm enough. It's night again, and this time the wind has brought company. The air howls around the longhouse with a sound like distant arguing. Sharp, inconsistent, personal. Snow taps the walls like impatient fingers. The storm has arrived, not with fury, but with persistence. It means to stay. You're already awake. No one's really sleeping tonight. The dog is pacing, the goats are restless, and even the fire has started popping louder, like it wants attention. Someone starts telling another saga. A quiet voice, low and steady. Not dramatic, not poetic, just familiar. You know this one. Everyone does. It's the story of Egil, who wrestled a sea serpent during a storm and came home with a limp and a wife. A classic Viking tale. Half myth, half moral, all soaked in weather. Your historical fact of the night. Norse mythology is deeply tied to natural forces. Storms, sea, ice. Thor wasn't just a comic book hero. He was thunder itself. If lightning struck, it meant the gods were having opinions. Meanwhile, the longhouse groans. The wind is testing the thatch. Snow presses into every crevice. The smoke hole above is stuffed with cloth, meant to block the worst of it. It helps. A little. You lie under your blankets, listening. The logs creak. The wind sighs. The child beside you mumbles in their sleep, caught in dreams made of frost and feathers. Time for something weird. Viking burial mounds were sometimes covered in stones shaped like ships, symbolizing the journey to the afterlife. So even in death, you were expected to travel. No pressure. The night stretches on. You whisper something to yourself. Not a prayer, not exactly. Just sound. A marker in the dark. The storm doesn't ease, but your heart does, and eventually you drift off, not deeply but enough. Enough to carry you through another night with your name intact. Enough to wake up to another day that hasn't decided what it wants from you. Morning will come. Eventually. Probably. Morning. Sort of. There's light, yes, but it's the kind of gray haze that doesn't quite commit. It hovers somewhere between dawn and don't bother. The storm has passed, leaving behind a hushed, powdered world. Everything is softened under snow, roofs, paths, even your own expectations. You sit up slowly. The blanket sticks to your woolen tunic with the stubborn affection of static. The dog is still asleep. So is most of the longhouse, though someone is already poking the fire with a stick, muttering to it like it owes them money. You swing your legs over the side of your sleeping bench. The floor is cold, but not hostile. Just firm. Just honest. Outside, snow is piled in knee-high drifts. The goats refuse to come out of their corner. One glares at you like this is your fault. Probably is, cosmically speaking. You put on your boots, still damp, somehow, and your cloak. You open the door. The cold greets you like an overenthusiastic acquaintance. It immediately gets into your eyes, your nose, your soul. You're going hunting today. Not because you want to, because you have to. The salted fish is running low, and the turnips are staging a rebellion. You gather your gear. A bow, a knife, a bag that has seen better centuries. Your breath fogs as you walk, feet crunching into untouched snow. Here's your major historical fact for the day. Vikings did hunt, but mostly relied on farming, livestock, and fishing. Hunting was supplemental, and usually for those who lived far from trade routes or just felt particularly unlucky. You head into the woods. The trees are beautiful in that foreboding, I might collapse on you kind of way. Branches hang heavy with snow. The air is silent except for the occasional caw of a bird who clearly has no travel plans. Your boots sink with each step. You scan the landscape. Nothing. No tracks. No movement. Just cold. Eventually you spot rabbit prints, light, nervous marks in the snow. You follow them, careful, quiet. Your breath is loud in your own ears. After an hour, you catch one. Small, but still something. You whisper an apology to the forest, which doesn't reply. On the walk back, you think about the sun. It's technically out, but feels more like a formality. Here's your odd cultural tidbit. Viking calendars were lunar-based and seasonally intuitive. Winter wasn't just a time of year, it was a state of being. You didn't measure days. You measured survival. Back in the longhouse, you clean the rabbit. It's a delicate job, done with numb fingers and a dull knife. You toss the bones into the stew pot. Waste is a luxury you can't afford. Someone brings you a piece of dried flatbread. Cracks like pottery and tastes like resolve. You dip it in the stew. It helps. Sort of. Later, you sit by the fire, feet stretched out, cloak wrapped around you like an apology. The rabbit meat is already simmering. The smell is thin but promising. The child is drawing in the soot on the wall with a stick. A boat, maybe, or a wolf, or a very bad chicken. The storm may have passed, But winter isn't done. Not even close. But you're fed. And inside. And that's enough for now. It's dark again. You're starting to forget what the world looked like when it wasn't shades of gray, brown, and white. The sun is a rumor these days. Still, you're awake. The fire's warm. Someone's telling another saga. This one is about a farmer who fell asleep in a snowbank and woke up 10 years later in a troll's basement. He eventually escaped by marrying a cloud and sailing away on a dead tree. You've heard worse. You sip from a wooden cup filled with broth. It's mostly water with a hint of rabbit. It warms your chest and convinces your stomach it's appreciated. Across the fire, someone is weaving. Their fingers move methodically, looping and knotting, pulling thread into meaning. Your major historical fact: Viking textiles were a point of pride. Women wove complex patterns using vertical looms, often making woolen cloth dyed with plants, lichens, and even fermented urine. Yes, that was part of the process. No, we don't talk about it. The thread snaps. A curse follows. It's minor, just enough to let the gods know you're paying attention. Outside, the wind picks up again. Just a breeze. Just a whisper. But you hear it. You add more wood to the fire. You're starting to know which logs burn slow and which ones just show off with sparks. Birch is pretty, but ash is reliable. Like a good neighbor or a mid-level god. The child curls up next to you. They're holding a carved wooden horse, missing one leg but still clearly proud of itself. You pat their head. They pretend not to like it. Now your weird cultural tidbit. Viking children played with wooden toys, including carts, animals, and even miniature longships. Some toys have been found buried alongside children in graves, as if play was something they could carry into the next life. The room is quieter now. The saga is over. Someone snores softly. The fire pops. You lean back, eyes half-lidded. The longhouse breathes with you. Outside, the sky churns with clouds. Somewhere, a raven laughs. You close your eyes anyway, because there's warmth here, and trust. And for tonight, that's enough. This morning begins with the sound of dripping. A slow, steady rhythm from the corner of the longhouse where snow has decided to explore a little more personally. You stare at the ceiling, watching droplets sneak through the thatch and fall into the waiting bucket. It's not the worst thing to wake up to. The worst was that one time the goat got into the grain bin. You sit up and stretch. Every joint comments on the experience. Your body, once again, sounds like a sack of frozen breadsticks. The fire is low but still alive. You feed it one of the smaller logs, the lazy ones that burn fast and complain about it the whole time. The dog yawns and flops against your knee. You push him off gently. He's not offended. He never is. Today is repair day. You collect your tools. Bone needles, a rough awl, and the last of the decent thread. There's a pair of breeches with holes in unfortunate places and a woolen sock that's more ambition than garment. Outside, the weather has calmed. No wind, just stillness. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for a decision. You sit near the door, patching the breeches. The light here is best, even if your fingers get numb. Your historical fact. Viking clothing was layered and practical. wool tunics, linen undergarments, leather belts, and shoes. Most garments were hand-sewn and mended often. Nothing was disposable, not even socks. Halfway through the repair, your neighbor, a man with a beard that might contain its own weather system, asks if you can help him fix a broken sled runner. You nod, not because you want to, but because saying no here is reserved for very specific emergencies, like wolves or childbirth. You step outside. The sled is tipped sideways in the snow like it gave up halfway home. The runner has splintered clean through. You kneel beside it and run your hand along the grain. It's fixable. Most things are. As you work, the man talks about the past few winters. You nod at the right times. He doesn't need solutions, just someone to hear his weather complaints. Here's your weird cultural tidbit. Viking sleds were often pulled by oxen or ponies, but some households trained large dogs to help. Imagine being pulled across a frozen fjord by a very determined puppy. Now imagine flipping over halfway through. You secure the runner with leather binding, reinforcing it with a wooden dowel and hope it'll hold for now. Back inside, the breeches are done. The sock is a lost cause. You cut it into strips and save them for tinder. Nothing is wasted, not even disappointment. Someone opens a jar of pickled something. You smell it across the room. You don't ask questions. You don't make eye contact. You just hope it doesn't end up in your bowl later. As the day fades, a little girl begins humming. A new song this time, or maybe an old one you haven't heard in a while. It drifts through the smoky air like a memory you didn't know you missed. The fire pops. A raven caws outside. The snow begins to fall again, gently this time. More of a suggestion than a storm. You patch your last seam. Fold the cloth. Stretch your legs. And breathe. Night again. Time slips oddly here. Days blend together like overcooked porridge. You measure life by meals, firewood, and the number of new holes in your cloak. Tonight is quieter than most. The wind has gone elsewhere. The snow falls straight and slow, like a sleepy curtain being drawn across the world. Inside the longhouse, people settle in. The goat has claimed a warm patch near the hearth. The dog stares at it, offended but passive. It's not worth the trouble. You're carving tonight a simple piece of driftwood, flat, smooth, and already shaped a little like something. You let your knife find the form, slowly, thoughtfully, without purpose. Vikings weren't all violence and conquest. They carved, they painted, they stitched, they sang. People forget that survival leaves room for beauty. Your historical fact: many Viking artifacts feature runes, symbols carved into bone, wood, and stone. Some were inscriptions, some were charms. Some may have just been someone bored on night watch. Your carving doesn't become anything in particular. Maybe a spoon, maybe a bird, maybe it's just the shape of your thoughts tonight. You set it aside. Nearby, a woman tells a joke. It's subtle and earthy. You laugh. Not loud, just enough to participate. Laughter in winter is currency. It buys warmth without burning anything. Tonight's strange cultural detail: Viking warriors sometimes wore good luck amulets shaped like Thor's hammer. But not just warriors. Children wore them too. Even housewives. It wasn't about battle, it was about protection in every form. You lie back, eyes on the smoke marks above. The soot tells stories too. Shapes you never noticed before. A deer. A boat. A face? No, just a shadow. You pull your blanket close. The warmth is patchy, but familiar. Someone sings again. Not the lullaby this time. A real song, with words and rhythm and even a few off-key moments. You feel it more than hear it. The song reminds you of boats, of waves, of waiting. And for a few moments, the longhouse becomes a ship. You a passenger. The fire, your mast. The shadows, your sails. You drift. And drift. And sleep doesn't knock. It just settles in beside you. Like it always does. Morning returns, but not dramatically. Just a subtle lift in the light. Like the sky cracking one lazy eye open to see if you're still here. You are. Somehow. Congratulations. You've survived another unremarkable miracle. You wake up warm, which is suspicious. Then you realize the child crawled over during the night and used your ribs as a mattress. You push them gently aside. They grumble like an old cat but roll off without protest. The fire is almost out. A few coals blink at you in half-hearted rebellion. You feed it one, then two small logs, whispering a few words to coax it back to life. Nothing poetic, just a deal between friends. Breakfast is a handful of dried fish and what might be cheese. Crumbles in your hand like soft rock and tastes vaguely like regret. But it fills your stomach, and that's what counts. Today is for gathering. You pull on your boots, wrap your cloak tight, and head out into the morning. Snowflakes catch in your eyelashes and melt down your cheeks. Feels dramatic, like crying in a silent film. You carry a basket on your hip, already scratched from years of service. The path to the storage hut is uneven. Ice lingers in the footprints of yesterday, waiting to test your ankles. You walk like someone balancing 3 invisible eggs on your head. Here's your major historical fact. Vikings stored food in pit cellars and raised huts, sometimes lined with straw, moss, or even seaweed to preserve insulation. They used what they had, and what they had was mostly cold, dirt, and hope. You check the hut. Inside, it's darker than expected. A few sacks of barley. Some onions miraculously still holding together. One of the turnips seems to be growing mold in protest. You take what you can, filling your basket slowly, thoughtfully, like choosing words for a difficult conversation. Outside again, the wind has picked up mild, but snide. You walk back, passing the carved post near the path. It's meant to ward off spirits, or thieves, or boredom. No one's sure anymore. It's been there since before you were born and probably before your father was smart enough to build the roof wrong twice. Your strange cultural tidbit. Vikings sometimes carved faces into standing posts, called ve or nidstang, used to mark sacred places or curse enemies. It's unclear if the spirits were appeased or just confused. You return to the longhouse, cheeks pink from wind, ears ringing. The dog meets you at the door and sniffs your basket with unearned optimism. You push past him and set the goods down. Tonight's stew will have barley, maybe even a suspicious onion. It's a feast by this week's standards. You settle down, feet aching, back complaining. Someone hands you a cup of warm water with a single dried berry floating in it like a tiny buoy of joy. You sip it slowly, pretending it's wine. Your imagination does the rest. Outside, the clouds start to knit together again. Inside, someone laughs, and the world, just for a breath, feels manageable. Night pulls its blanket across the sky again, tucking the stars just barely in view. The longhouse is quieter tonight. Not silent, there's always a whisper of motion. Creaking beams, settling bodies. The occasional sigh from the fire or an old man shifting on his bench like he's trying to dream more comfortably. You lie with your back to the wall, watching the flames dance. They cast shadows that look vaguely like old stories, ones you've half forgotten but still carry the feeling of. Someone plays a stringed instrument, a lyre maybe, or something pretending to be one. The sound is delicate, like footsteps in frost. You close your eyes for a moment, then open them again. Sleep is near, but shy. You sit up, slowly. Wrap your cloak around your shoulders and walk quietly to the hearth. The fire is friendly tonight, low and warm, the way good memories feel when you're not quite sure they happened. You poke the coals. Add another log. Sit. Your historical fact for this chapter. Viking longhouses could house anywhere from a single family to a full extended clan. Some stretched over 75 feet long. Central hearths were used for heat, light, and cooking, and for telling every kind of truth. You lean forward and warm your hands. Someone sits beside you. No words, just shared heat. You listen together to the fire's story. Crackle, hiss, whisper. It's fluent in comfort. Tonight's obscure tidbit. Viking warriors sometimes carried fire steels and tinder made from fungi or birch bark, stored in small pouches. Being able to light a fire quickly wasn't just survival, it was prestige. A man who could summon warmth on demand? Practically a magician. You trace a shape in the ash. A spiral, maybe, or a wheel, or nothing at all. You think about the boats, the real ones out on the fjord, or dry-docked for the season, sails tucked like sleeping wings. Some of your kin are fishermen. Some are traders. One was a raider briefly. He came back missing 2 fingers and all sense. Now he carves spoons and tells the same story with different endings. You glance toward the back of the longhouse. The child is asleep, curled under a fur, thumb in mouth, dreams in progress. You stand, stretch, return to your spot by the wall. Lie down, exhale. The music fades. The fire sinks lower. And the night, once again, invites you to let go. Not to forget, just to rest. Some of your kin are fishermen. Some are traders. One was a raider briefly. He came back missing 2 fingers and all sense. Now he carves spoons and tells the same story with different endings. The world is softer today. You don't open your eyes right away, you just listen. The wind outside is calm, brushing the walls like a careful hand. The fire breathes steadily. Somewhere across the room, someone is quietly snoring in a rhythm that could pass for music if you were generous enough. You shift beneath your blanket, feeling the slight ache in your joints, earned from a life of walking, lifting, enduring. Everything in this place is earned. Even the dreams. You finally open your eyes. A gentle light filters through the smoke hole. Just enough to say, yes, time still exists, but not enough to make any promises. You sit up slowly, your cloak still wrapped around your shoulders like a reluctant hug. The air smells like wood smoke, wool, and just the faintest memory of stew. Today is cleaning day, which is a kind way of saying, we've ignored this mess for long enough. You start by clearing out the ash pan from the hearth. It's still warm, so you move slowly, scooping it with a curved piece of horn. The ash falls into a clay pot with a hiss, like it's reluctant to leave its cozy home. Your major historical fact: Vikings used ash from their hearth fires as cleaning agents, combined with water or animal fat to make primitive soap. Cleanliness was respected. Even feared by their enemies, Arab chroniclers often remarked how obsessively Norsemen washed, especially compared to, well, pretty much everyone else. You scrub the floor with a stiff broom made from tied twigs. Dust rises in lazy spirals, dancing in the beams of morning light. You feel like a part-time priest, sweeping ghosts out with each stroke. Someone sneezes. You glance over. The child looks offended by their own nose. You nod solemnly, like sneezing is a serious matter. They nod back, equally solemn. The moment passes. You wipe down one of the benches, noticing the grooves worn into it over time. Not decorative, just the quiet erosion of habit. Elbows resting, plates sliding, children fidgeting. There's comfort in that. You open the door for fresh air. The cold rushes in like a neighbor who doesn't knock. Brash, familiar, and weirdly invigorating. Outside, the snow has crusted over, creating a shell you can walk on until it doesn't, and you drop half a leg into last week. The dog runs past, triumphant with a stick in his mouth. The stick may once have been part of a fence. You choose peace and pretend not to notice. Today's obscure cultural tidbit: Vikings sometimes swept their homes with bundles of dried herbs like juniper or thyme, both for the scent and the supposed protection against illness or evil spirits. A tidy home wasn't just practical, it was defensive. You return inside and hang a bundle of dry juniper by the door. Smells sharp and clean, like forest memory. Back by the fire, you pause. The room is quieter now, clearer. The air tastes lighter. You sit and sip warm water. No fish, no stew, just heat and breath. The goat snorts once in the corner. The child hums a nonsense tune. The wind sighs against the wall. Everything, just for now, feels where it belongs. You wake before light, not on purpose. The world just pulls you gently from sleep with that strange sense of stillness. Not silence, stillness. The kind that feels like the air is holding its breath. You sit up, eyes adjusting to the dim red glow of dying embers. You don't reach for your boots. Not yet. You just sit. The fire is barely there. Just coals. a heartbeat of light under a blanket of ash. You lean close and whisper your morning bargain. One log, one flame, one promise to try again today. The flame returns, slowly, sleepily. You sit back, letting it warm your face. Others begin to stir. Quiet movements. The longhouse breathes its first of the day. Someone asks if today is good for ice fishing. You don't answer. They weren't asking you, they were asking the gods, the sky, and maybe the lake itself. You eat a piece of dried meat and half a hard biscuit that cracks like a broken wheel. You chew anyway. Winter doesn't care if you enjoy breakfast. You pull on your boots. Today you go to the lake. The path is long and uneven. Snow crunches underfoot in a rhythm you could drum to if your fingers weren't freezing. Your historical fact: ice fishing in the Viking Age wasn't documented in the way we know it today, but Norse sagas and archaeological finds suggest frozen lakes were accessed for winter food. By breaking holes in the ice and using baited lines or woven baskets beneath the surface. You arrive to find 3 men already there, stomping their feet and grumbling about everything from ice thickness to their aching knees. You greet them with a nod. That's plenty. Together you chip a hole in the ice. The sound is jarring in the quiet, metal against frozen water, sharp and echoing. But it's satisfying too. You lower a line, baited with something unfortunate looking. And wait, that's the hard part. Not the cold, not the hunger, the waiting. The ice creaks beneath you, just a whisper. You shift your weight. The lake pretends not to notice. Time drifts, and then tug. Not a strong pull, just a nudge. You haul in your line slowly, carefully. A fish, small, but real. You lift it from the hole and hold it in the light. Its silver scales catch the sun, which has finally shown up, fashionably late as always. The other men grunt in approval. That's a high compliment here. Your obscure tidbit for the day. Some Viking communities believed that lakes and rivers had spirits or ancient guardians, and offerings were sometimes tossed into the water, coins, weapons, or carved figurines. Especially before fishing trips or travels, you toss a pebble into the hole. Not a sacrifice, just respect. You head back, fish in hand. The others stay. By the time you reach the longhouse, the sun is disappearing again. That's all it ever does. Peer, vanish, tease. Inside, the fire is strong now. Someone hands you a warm cloth for your face. Another offers soup. You add your fish to the pot. Stir once. Sit down. You're tired, but satisfied. Today you waited, and the world answered. Not loudly, not with gold or glory, just with enough. And right now, that's everything. You've come to know this rhythm, this slow, cold ballet between hunger and warmth, between routine and resilience. And as winter leans closer toward its final act, you begin to see it all. Not as suffering, but as survival poetry. Messy, icy, quietly miraculous. You wake to the sound of footsteps above the ceiling beams. Probably a squirrel again, or maybe the gods checking in to make sure no one's bailed on their test. You stretch under your cloak, joints stiff but cooperative. You don't leap to your feet. You rise slowly, because that's how one honors the day, with reluctant grace. Outside, the snow is melting. Not much, but enough to smell earth again. Just a hint of mud and moss beneath the crust of frost. The world sighs. You sigh back. This is the in-between season. Not quite spring. Not fully winter. A confusing, slushy limbo where boots freeze at night but drip by noon. Inside the longhouse, someone is making bread. Or something that wants to be bread but will probably taste like guilt and sawdust. Still, it smells divine. Your final major historical fact. As spring neared, food reserves were lowest. This was the hardest time, called the hunger gap in many agrarian societies. It was when planning paid off or didn't, when patience became currency, and when the stories mattered most. Because stories kept people upright. You help with the dough. It sticks to your fingers. A child laughs when flour puffs onto your nose like war paint. You let them laugh. You even grin back. Later, you help patch the roof with a mixture of clay, moss, and whatever optimism you can scrape together. It leaks in 3 places now. A record low. Birdsong returns, faint but real. And there, by the tree, the first green shoots piercing the snow. You and a neighbor both spot it at the same time, but neither of you says anything. Feels sacred, like if you name it too soon, it'll vanish. Your final obscure tidbit. Some Viking communities held quiet, personal rituals when the first signs of spring appeared. Tiny toasts. Whispered thanks to Freyr or lesser house spirits. Not public ceremonies. Just nods to the world for not forgetting them. You sit outside as the sun lowers behind the hills. The light is golden, stretched long across the snow. The dog lies at your feet. The fire smokes from the chimney. A distant axe splits wood in a steady rhythm. You made it, through the cold, through the boredom, through the long nights and longer silences. There were no dragons, no epic battles, no raids or spoils or grand feasts, just hunger and hard decisions, splinters and splashes of joy. And in a way, that's the bigger story. Because surviving the winter in the north wasn't a battle. It was a lullaby. A slow song you hummed every day, even when your voice cracked. And somehow you're still singing. Wind down. And now, let the fire die down. Let the shadows soften. The hard edges of the day blur. Gently. You are warm, wrapped in furs and flickering memory. The snow outside no longer threatens. It rests, just like you, blanketing the world in hush, like the last page of a book that needs no words. You hear a breath beside you, someone drifting into sleep. The wood creaks overhead. The wind, once a growl, is now just a whisper tracing the roof. You remember the path you walked this morning, the shape of the door, the cold rim of your cup. Tiny moments, gentle anchors. The longhouse is full but quiet, full of breath and life and the quiet nobility of people who keep going. And now you rest among them. You, survivor of soft battles, champion of one more day, builder of small warmths. Close your eyes, let the story settle in your bones, and drift, slowly, into the next quiet season. We'll be here when you wake.